need to record it on YouTube. Welcome everybody to this show with Dr. Stephen Grable. We're going to learn about telemetry and we're going to learn about the Asyra. What are those things you say? We're going to learn about it. Today is my birthday, and coincidentally enough, it's the 8th anniversary of the show. A show that started off as a, hey, let's do something fun, to this show may have saved my life. And so I will talk about that later on. But for now, we're going to really focus on learning about different ways to heal, different ways to grow. And so fasten your seatbelt. If you have any questions for Dr. Grable, or if you have any questions about this topic, or for me, feel free to write them down. And during certain periods, we will go ahead and address them. So fasten your seatbelts. We're going to learn and grow together. Time to dance, everybody.
The Lillian McDermott Show.
We love, we fear, bridges we burn, we make mistakes, then we live and learn. When life gets tough, and it seems like your best ain't good enough. If you're in need of hope, you know where I'll be right here. Right here, and when you need a friend, you can count on me. I'll be right here, waiting for you.
This is the place you can always turn to when you need a friend. The Lillian McDermott Show. To reach out to Lillian, visit her on the web at whenyouneedafriend.com. Now let's all learn together. Here's Lillian McDermott.
Hello, my listening friend. It's so nice we can meet each other on the air on this beautiful, best day ever. And for those of you who have been tuning in since 2011, or maybe just yesterday for the first time, you know that today is the anniversary of the Lillian McDermott Radio Show / Classroom. And I am so excited that you've returned to be a part of it. But if this is, excuse me, I've got a doctor in the house. But if this is the first time that you have tuned into the show, let me tell you, I've been waiting for you. It is my commitment to provide alternative ways to heal, and it is my mission to make awareness, responsibility, and truth a part of our everyday life. And I hope you, my listening, as well as my viewing friends at Facebook.com/Lillian's Radio Show will feel empowered to embrace a new truth and live the life of your dreams. I am so thrilled every time I get to learn something new. And as I was saying before the show, before the show started back in 2011, and I'm not going to make a big anniversary deal today because we're going to come back with Dr. Grable. He's going to join us in the future. We're going to make some big deals. We're going to talk about some of the changes of the show. But today it's all about learning and growing with Dr. Steve Grable, because it's important for us that we think that we're going down a path and all of a sudden you get hit by a 2x4, and then you don't realize that hit with a 2x4 was exactly what needed to happen to wake you up or to give you new life. And so today I celebrate with Dr. Grable because he is an incredible doctor. He's my doctor now, and I will claim him as my doctor. And I hope that when you hear his thinking outside the box mentality, that you too will call him your doctor if you live in the Jacksonville area. So Dr. Stephen Grable is the founder of Complementary Care Center in Jacksonville, Florida. And so when I had the radio station there, I was like, oh, I'm so excited. People finally need to do this. But now we can target that area. But you don't have to live in Jacksonville. You can live just about anywhere. It's a quick little drive. and you will be exposed to this man that I like to call Inspector Gadget, because there's a gadget for everything that you have a symptom for, and it will help you get to that root cause. Today in particular, I want to focus on the Asyra, and the other is the telemetry. Is that I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Thermometry. Thermometry. Is that correct? Okay, now I looked at it and it's thermometry. And with that in mind, just know that it is our sole purpose in life to give and receive love and knowledge. And I am grateful that Dr. Steve Grable is here to do just that. Welcome, Dr. Grable, to the Lillian McDermott Radio Show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Okay, share a little bit about your background, your medical background, your education, and what led you to discover alternative, functional, holistic ways to heal the body.
Well, I'm board certified in internal medicine, and I began my practice in 1990. And I did 5 years of conventional and hospital practice and through drugs and symptoms like all the other docs do. I realized this really wasn't the best way to practice. So I got trained in acupuncture, and that started a whole path of what's called functional medicine. And docs like me, we try to find the root cause for a problem rather than just throwing drugs at everything. So today we're going to talk about the Alpha and perhaps the Asyra if we have time. And so I think a little background on when I started this journey 24 years ago. I used to do a lot of organic acid tests and spit tests and stool tests. And they were okay, but they could get a little expensive. And the amount of really useful information was kind of equivocal. So I kind of lost interest in them. So I got involved in electrodermal screening, which we'll come back to later on the Asyra. And then I was introduced to Alfa Thermometry. And this technology, it's really interesting. I was just reading, Lillian, that this actually goes back to Hippocrates.
Wow.
That they would put mud over patients, and where it dried first, they knew that it was warmer, and that would give them information about what was going on in the body.
No way.
3,500 years ago that there was some relationship here. So what we know in science is that there are reflexes between the skin and the organs inside the body. And so the alpha thermometry is a way to detect abnormalities going on in the body.
How accurate is it, and how comfortable do you feel with it?
Well, I think it's very accurate. The Germans did a lot of the original work with this 30 years ago. And a Dr. David Hickey out in Texas used MRI and CT SPECT imaging to correlate what they were finding with this test. And let me just describe how the test is done.
Yes.
There's a little bit of preparation involved, and you come in and you sit in a cool room for about 10 minutes. So that helps to get the temperature at the right level. And then our technician, she comes in and she touches a little probe to roughly 100 different acupuncture points. And we know that each point corresponds to a specific part of the body. And they found in their research that, for example, in looking at breasts, that they had it was 20% more sensitive than mammogram in identifying problems. And you can find issues sometimes years ahead of when they show up with conventional testing.
Now, they say that with mammograms, that by the time a mammogram finds something, it's like 10 years down the road. Have they equated an amount of time, if you say 20%, have they equated an amount of time where this modality or this tool can find it sooner? Well,
there appears to be good evidence that we can find it sooner. Of course, we have to be careful what claims we make, because the device thermography was approved by the FDA in 1982. And so this is really an extension of thermography. And some of the listeners might be aware of thermograms where they have a camera that will take a picture of your body, and you can see various cool and hot areas that can give you information about what's going on. This technology also measures temperature, but it does it very specifically at specific acupuncture points. So it's really a much more detailed, much more careful analysis. And so we can find things a lot sooner than we can with some of just the direct imaging studies.
Okay, so I've done thermography, and I've done the one that we're talking about, thermometry. And there was a huge difference between the two. You know, with the thermometry, you have like a little probe that you're looking at the acupuncture points that you were talking about. So do they look for different things? Should someone that had a thermogram or thermography also do okay, now I'm getting the now I'm getting the two, now that they're so very similar. And so should they expect about the same thing?
Well, they're both analyzing the body, but to me, in my opinion, the Alpha test is really a much more precise analysis of what's going on. So we start, it looks at the brain, the pituitary, it looks at your sinuses, it looks at your teeth. We analyze all the teeth. Looks at the breast, which is a lot of folks will come in for a breast analysis. It looks at all your internal organs, looks at your lung and heart and circulation, musculoskeletal system. So we really get a lot of information about what's going on in the body. I think one of the nicest things that you can see is, for example, your capacity to detoxify. And that one piece of information alone is well worth running the test. Because, we're all full of toxins. The Environmental Working Group found 287 chemicals in newborns, which to me is just amazing.
Yeah.
So we accumulate all this stuff. So.
And then, of course, you come in with chelation to help detoxify, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So for those of you who don't know the backstory, when I first met Dr. Grable, it was at a ACIM conference. He's a practitioner. He's followed Dr. Lee Cowden, who's been on the show, and he got up to ask a question. And after he sat down, I lost sight of him. And I was determined to meet him, because when I heard he was from Jacksonville, I was like, okay, the people in Jacksonville or in the surrounding areas, or if you want to drive from Georgia or go up from Orlando or East Coast, we need to know that there's someone out there that not only uses the science, but also is willing to step outside the box and look at the root cause. And when we started talking about this, I thought, wow, this is incredible that as I was leaving for the day, after looking for him all day, we bumped into each other. But a year prior, I had reached out to Dr. Grable because I was doing a show on chelation, and I found out that he was doing chelation in Jacksonville area. That's a totally different show. But real quick, Dr. Grable, what is chelation for people that might be interested in detoxifying?
Well, chelation comes from the word claw, and we use EDTA, which is 4 vinegar molecules stuck together. And we give this by an IV infusion. And the EDTA goes in and it binds lead and other heavy metals and pulls them out. And it also seems to help with circulation as well. One of the things that I learned is that the old standard long EDTA chelation we do goes after biofilms. I don't know if you've ever studied that, but
no.
Bacteria and fungi in our bodies can secrete this like filmy coatings that protect them from the immune system.
Mm-hmm.
The EDTA can help to strip that off so the immune system can see and go after the different microbes. But it's typically, patients that have angina, chest pain, circulatory problems. Those are the folks that oftentimes will get chelation, but everybody could benefit.
Yeah. So when you're saying that it'll show you the predisposition of detoxification, is that the one reason you use it? Why would we want to go and have this testing done? And how do you use it?
Well, I see a lot of patients. I see a lot of folks with Lyme disease, chronic fatigue, pain, mystery illnesses. They've been to doctor, getting put on Prozac, this drug, that drug, and they're just not getting anywhere. And so this test, along with the Asyra, can really help us to hone in on, whether they have a problem, like say in their teeth, they're all the teeth are connected to the different parts of the body. So I've known of a bad tooth even causing cancer in patients, and having those teeth out, the problem clears up. Breast, as I mentioned, a lot of ladies don't want to do mammograms. Mammograms have a 2 to 3% increased risk of breast cancer per study, and it's cumulative. That's a little scary. So I think that some of these things, they kind of tend to add up. You've heard of the BRCA gene, the Angelina Jolie gene.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know that gene is actually protective? But it's very radiosensitive. So I think, they don't mean to, but I think they're actually giving some of these women breast cancer. They're doing mammograms every 6 months, this kind of craziness. So I don't tell ladies to stop doing mammograms. I would never do that.
Correct.
But for those that choose to maybe decrease the number of them that are doing, I think that the alpha test is a nice adjunct, and certainly better than just not doing anything, which is what some folks will do.
Well, you did talk about the BRCA gene, and they say 50% of women who have this gene get cancer, but the ones they don't talk about are the 50% that don't.
Right.
They don't talk about that. And so it's my opinion, and maybe you can share what you think about this and the science, that it's my opinion that a DNA test should be used as preventative. You can see what your predisposition, but then you live your lifestyle so that you can turn everything off. That's my opinion.
Well, it's interesting, we're still in our infancy with DNA testing. And a lot of people don't realize, I learned this going to Jeff Bland meetings, 20 years ago, that food can turn on and turn off genes.
Yes. Which
I think is really, if you ponder that, that's an amazing concept.
Mm-hmm.
Hippocrates, said 3,500 years ago, let your food be your medicine.
Yes.
And your medicine be your food, right? So I think it's going to be a little difficult. I think that DNA testing can give us some clues as to where people are. I think right now where it's useful would be in terms of drug detoxification.
Mm-hmm.
So if you had what's called a SNP, and I can describe that if you think the listeners would be interested.
Mm-hmm. Yes, please.
We have in our DNA, I'll give you a little DNA classroom here.
It's good.
They're made up of what are called nucleotides. And there's 4 nucleotides that go by the letters A, T, C, and G. And so your DNA is just made up of various combinations of A, T, C, and G. So like maybe AA, T, C, G, G, AA, etc. Just long chains of that. And the ribosomes go along and they make proteins and so forth from copying what's on the DNA. Well, let's say you have a protein that's made up of 1,000 nucleotides. Well, if one of those is off, that is a single nucleotide polymorphism, or SNP for short. So if you have a SNP, that doesn't mean that you're not making, say, an enzyme completely, because otherwise you probably would have died in utero. But it may predispose you to having certain inabilities to detox certain medications or other problems that can manifest given certain triggers. So there's a lot of companies now that are doing, everybody's heard of 23andMe, and there's a number of different companies that are doing fairly inexpensive DNA testing. And that, I think, we're just trying to learn what to do with the information that we're getting.
Yeah.
Because, you can take identical twins that have the exact same DNA, and one gets a disease and the other doesn't.
Yeah.
So it's that environmental influence,
You have said this before, and I've said it on the show, and I've said it on my presentations, that what we do inherit mostly is the family recipes. Mm-hmm. When you think about it, we eat a certain way, we go home, we have family reunions, and you see around the table people that resemble one another in many ways. And it's not just the food. And this is where we focus on the body. It's also the spirit and mind work that we, the stuff that we were told since we were little, and the, being right all the time, or the arguments and not being able to let go of things. So that all plays into the effect. And I think Lee Cowden's been on the show, and he said, if people can just work on the spiritual aspect and the mind, the body would heal so quickly. Have you heard him say that?
Oh yeah. And Lee was the one who taught me that the quantum physicists have now discovered the smallest particle. They kept looking for they get smaller and smaller, and we had quarks and then pentaquarks and tetraquarks. Well, the smallest one is called a theatron, and it's a wave. So I've taught this to a number of my patients. So everything is energy. And so when you look at tests like the Alpha or the Asyra, we're really kind of looking at the body from an energetic perspective. And as you brought up, when you're looking at emotions, a great book for the listeners to get is one called Heal Thyself by Peter DeWitt. And he and two other MDs argue, I think successfully, that cancer and probably most illness begins with emotion, and which is a pretty powerful concept. But when you think of thought as being energy, we all know of people who've had stomach ulcers from stress or heart attacks and whatnot. But you can really literally shift your metabolism based on your mind and all that sort of thing.
It's amazing. And I think the more we embrace that, we're more than just a body, that the quicker we will forgive, and that we will deal with some of the past traumas in our life that just sit with us and just sit there and manifest. Now, speaking of sitting with us and manifestation, you had mentioned the meridian points, and you were talking about with the thermometry that you put it in certain meridian points, and it allows you to see beyond that one section and that meridian point. And so can we talk about meridians and what they are and why they're so important when it comes to this testing?
Well, we have 12 main meridians, which are pathways that energy called chi flows on. And everybody's heard of yin and yang, that Chinese symbol. And so there's 6 circuits in the body. And so these circuits have sort of access points to the skin. And so when you see an acupuncturist, they'll put a needle in, or they might use different techniques to stimulate that point to get the chi flowing. Well, these points can also serve as a means of identifying things that are going on in the body. So in the Alpha test, what we're doing is we're measuring a temperature shift. You're in a cool room, and so that it gives a little temperature stimulation, and the body's response will give you then information about what's going on in that specific organ system that it's being tested. And when they did this original research decades ago, they did basically 100,000 tests over the last 30 years that have proven the validity and reliability of this testing. So it's kind of like a window into the different parts of our body. And there's very, conventional medicine, which has some terrific things. You can't get this kind of information. You can't just go around, scanning people from head to toe. And so I think it's a very useful tool.
I just recently had this done twice. I had it done twice. I'm the lucky one. And it was a very cold room. So that would be the most uncomfortable thing. And you do the test at the beginning, and then you pause for 10 minutes and you do the test again. What's the symbolism of doing it the first time, pausing, and doing it the second time, being in that cold room?
Well, there's a correlation then with you sitting in there, and their what are called algorithms, which are the formulas that they've developed that they've been able to then correlate, as I mentioned, with the SPECT scanning and MRIs. So they used conventional means to verify and validate what they're finding. I think that's important. They could just make up things and just say, oh, well, this point does this and this point does that, but they've actually been able to correlate that with what's actually going on in the body.
How specific is it? Because when I was looking at my results, it seemed like there was a broad range of things to look at and continue looking. Is this a diagnostic tool, or is this a tool that will help you go deeper into a diagnosis?
Well, just for medical legal reasons, diagnosis is made by history of physical and conventional lab testing. Okay, so it's a tool that provides information. And so, but I believe that it can really help to guide us and point us in a direction. See, when you're making a diagnosis, when you have a patient sitting there,
Mm-hmm.
you're trying to piece together and create kind of a picture of what's going on. And so the more information you have, whether it's conventional testing, which I do,
Mm-hmm.
The Alfa test or the Asyra, as we can go into, these all provide me information that I can start to see a picture and can connect the dots.
Mm-hmm.
That helps to guide me on what therapies to recommend. Sometimes if I see something on there, for example, if you look at the breast, there's 13 different parameters that we look at. And they have found through their research that 0 to 5 abnormalities, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
are normal. So anything up to 5 is normal. Anything above 5, you start to worry more and more and more that there's some pathology going on in the breast.
Mm-hmm.
So if I see something above 5, I may recommend, for example, an ultrasound.
Got it.
For those patients, as an aside here, there's a company called HerScan, just like it sounds. And they have a mobile unit that will come to town periodically, and they will do an ultrasound without mammogram. See, one of the problems is that you send people for an ultrasound,
Yeah.
or even better, an MRI,
Mm-hmm.
and the radiologist won't do it without a mammogram,
Correct.
which is what we've been trying to not do quite so much of. You know, just it made me just think of something. I was at a chelation meeting. Oh man, this is 25 years ago. And I'll never forget, there was a speaker who got up and presented a very convincing case that mammograms cause cancer, a lot of the cancers.
That's been around for a while. Yeah.
Way back when. Again, I'm not advocating that people stop doing them, but I think that we have to think, you should do research, really think for yourself with all this stuff.
Yeah.
So, we want to try to get a picture of, where the patient is and what we can do to try to help them.
Yes. And so we have a question from Facebook. We were just told by Robert. Penny, she wants to know the author of Heal Thyself. Is that Duet?
It's Peter Duet. It's he's a German name, like Deweit. Don't hold me to that. But if you just look up Heal Thyself and just go to Amazon, you should pull it right up.
Thank you for that question, Penny. And for those of you who have questions for Dr. Grable, you're welcome to ask it during the show. We will take a look. I'm being notified when there is a question. I'm totally interested in what Dr. Grable is saying, but if you have a question, now is the time to ask. But if later on, if you view this, because we're hoping that this will be shared by many and that many people are going to be seeing this important information, that if you have a question, you're still able to ask, and I'll just send it back to Dr. Grable. Is there anything else before we take a little break and I talk about all my sponsors and about this thermography that we need to, thermometry that we need to talk about? They're so similar. Why do they have to make two things so similar that are so different? They look so different, and so why do they have to be called so similar?
Well, I think they called it, they label it thermometry because they wanted to make the distinction between that and thermography. Because, the thermography is, like I said, that camera picture, and the thermometry is like a thermometer. We're measuring sort of temperature response at those different acupuncture points.
Yes.
I would say one of the things I point out is, right now we charge $149, which I think is very reasonable for the amount of information that you get. When you look at costs today, I had a patient the other day went to the ER and literally had a cold, was given a prescription for Tylenol, and he had a $5,000 bill.
What?
Yeah, it's crazy. And so, some of the costs are just going out of sight. So I think these technologies can really help us to cost effectively get a better idea of what's going on.
Yes, absolutely. It is very important. And that's what this show is about, is taking ownership and responsibility for our life. There are so many symptoms that we experience in our life, and we go to the doctor, and the doctor calls it by a diagnosis. Whatever that symptom is now turns into a diagnosis. And how do you know it's a diagnosis? Somebody along the way came up with some pill to call it a diagnosis, right, Dr. Grable? I mean, we've talked about how, something isn't recognized until there's a pill for it. And so it's time for us to take our health back, take ownership of our health, and understand that we are the creators of our life, and we are co-creators. And if we take ownership and we say, I created everything in my life, we can uncreate it. And that's what I love about Dr. Grable. First of all, I don't think he's going to know, he didn't know I was going to talk about this, but as my doctor, I want to brag about him. We are currently working on an issue with me, and he has gone out of his way to make sure I receive the proper care that I deserve, that we all deserve. And because of his heroics, it's been, everything's going to move forward. And he and I are going to share in the future when the time comes. But just know that if you want a doctor who treats you like a number, go somewhere else. But if you want a doctor that will sit with you, and I mean, how long is your average first visit, Dr. Grable?
First of all, thank you, Lillian, for those kind words.
Well, thank you for your...
Yeah, I spend 45 full minutes with someone, and we have a fairly extensive form to fill out, and I always apologize to my patients about that. But
it's pretty extensive.
I spend a good 20, 30 minutes before I ever see the patient, and I have a good problem list before I ever sit down with them, so I feel like I already know them to some degree. And then we can spend that 45 minutes discussing, things of interest to them and so forth. The other thing that we offer is we have a portal with our charm, and I clear my message board every morning. So I make it available to patients if they have questions in between office visits, or if they have a problem with something I've recommended, that they can contact me.
Yes.
And I really try hard to get back to them in a timely fashion. And that's something, a lot of offices today, you're lucky to get through, or good luck trying to get a doctor to call you back. Mm-hmm. So that's just one of the perks that we offer. So.
Well, I am so grateful that the universe has brought you to me. And although I want to keep you just to myself, I know that other people deserve to spend time with you as well. And I want to encourage all of you who are in the Jacksonville area or the surrounding area, or if you can make a drive to see him, it's worth using his technology and all the different tools. So Dr. Stephen Grable is a sponsor of my show. We also have Liberty Health Share, who was on yesterday. So if you watched the program yesterday, between Liberty Health Share and Dr. Grable, my two newest heroes that I will share when the time comes. And of course, Keep Me Safe Organics, beauty products, all the beauty products that you see me wearing is Keep Me Safe Organics, because I am detoxifying, right, Dr. Grable? I am detoxifying my body. And, beauty products are notorious for, we keep our chemicals underneath the cabinet, but we put it on with our makeup and completely destroy our body. And so get 10% off for the total purchase. Go to whenyouneedafriend.com. Also, First Alternative Care, $35 a month for those moments that you don't have an emergency or don't need to see Dr. Grable right away. These are for just the common little things for your entire family. It's $35 a month, and that will take care of your non-urgent, quick type of things that you can take care of. $35 a month per household. And of course, the pharmacy in Merritt Island. And I think I've got everybody that I needed to mention so far. But here's the thing. When you go to whenyouneedafriend.com, you enter into a classroom of people who want to take ownership. And so when you do that, make sure you subscribe to the channel, the podcast, YouTube. When you do that, this information comes to you. So we try to make this as easy as possible. And on this day, on the anniversary, I would love to see likes and follows increase by 100 to 200. So share this and ask your friends as a gift for my birthday and the anniversary of the show, which we're going to be celebrating at the end of the month. If you can do that and help me celebrate by that, that's the greatest gift that you can give me. And you can always call, text 407-373 5959. So Penny, thank you so much. She says, I'm 6 hours away, but willing to drive. Whoa! Have you seen Dr. There you go. And we have Yvonne from Malaysia. So I don't think Yvonne's going to fly over to see you, but Yvonne is learning from you. She is learning how to be a healer, someone who helps other people discover. Now, Dr. Grable, when people come to you and it is foreign to you, you're scratching your head and they've done the thermometry, and now we're going to talk about Asyra. They've done that. Have you ever just scratched your head and thought, what else do I need to do for this person? How do you feel when you can't figure something out?
Well, I use my Isabel. So I have a contract with a supercomputer. And so in fact, I did today. I've got a patient of mine who came in and he's got an interesting malady. And so I had him check off, I have what's called a review of systems sheet. And so that's just a bunch of symptoms and have him circle the ones. So what I'm gonna do is tonight or tomorrow is go to the Isabel site and plug, I always love how they give these computers genders, and plug in those symptoms and his age, and it will, in a couple of seconds, give me a differential or a whole list of possibilities, which can help me to kind of think about maybe some areas that I haven't thought about. Mm-hmm. So I find that really interesting, very, very educational. And so that's really a cool thing. And I do a lot of interesting standard blood tests. My patients come back and they say when they go to the Quest or LabCorp and they see my name, and the IV tech or the phlebotomist or the people they'll kind of roll their eyes because I order all these tests that conventional docs typically don't order, because it's just, I'm really driven. I read all the time, and it's I want to know what's going on. And yes. So, there's a lot of good tests and things we can do to figure out what's happening. So.
Well, I tell you what, I've never met anyone who's up as early as I am. So I call Dr. Grable the male version of me. So, and so it's been really very fun. When you can call your doctor a friend as well, because, I've always said, I don't need my doctors to become friends. I have friends, but I can honestly say, I'm so grateful you're on my side, Dr. Grable.
Well, everything, it's just so amazing. I can't not talk about God. I'm sorry for some of the audience, but just there's serendipities. There's things, miracles are happening all the time. Mm-hmm. And things, you're put in the place that you're supposed to be at the right time. And these things are not accidents. These things, it's amazing to me how I'll see a patient and I'll realize if they had come in a year prior, I probably would not have really known as well what path to go down with them. And so they'll present at the right time and be able to figure things out. And it's just cool how God maneuvers the chessboard and moves things around. So
it's great. It's great. Is there anything else you want us to know about thermometry before we move on?
No, they're just kind of what we talked about. I think it's just, like I said, it can just give you information about the various organ systems, not just the breast. Mm-hmm. And, it can do it in a way that you can't find this information out with really almost any other method that I know of.
Yes, yes. And so Martha is agreeing with you. So thank you, Martha, for tuning in. And for those of you, let us know where you're from, where you're listening from. I know, Yvonne, it's always nice. It's like 4 a.m. for Yvonne in Malaysia. So this show is truly worldwide. But for those of you, if people want to reach out to you and they're not from the United States, can you help them as well?
Oh, sure. Yeah, we can. If you contact, my website is drgrable.com. Mm-hmm. Just contact us and we could set up, a meeting, and I can answer your questions and if you filled out my form, we'll work it out for you.
Yes.
Because I do want to try to help you and help you to figure out what's wrong and get you fixed.
Yes, we'll have an international wing for Dr. Grable's office. And so for those of you who are near the Jacksonville area, if you want to drive 6 hours to see Dr. Grable, which I think is worth the drive, Jacksonville is a beautiful place. You can have a family vacation. Dr. Grable is at Complementary Care Center That's 1504 Roberts Drive in Jacksonville, Florida. And the number is 904-247-7455. Worth the trip. And and the staff is beautiful. They're all wonderful and kind. And so I've had a wonderful experience, which is one of the things I want to do is if I wouldn't go to a person, I am not going to promote them. I am not going to have them come on my show. I don't need that in my life right now. I just want to be surrounded by like-mindedness and doctors that are smarter than me, because that's one thing, Dr. Grable. There are many times where the doctors that we go to are in worse health than we are. Mm-hmm. And I always say, if your doctor doesn't look the way you want to look, fire them. Move on. Go to a doctor that you want to look like. Okay, pretty soon I'll have short blonde hair. There you go. Okay, so now let's move to the Asyra. And how is Asyra different than the thermometry?
Well, this tool, it's interesting. This dates back to the 50s. There was a German named Voll. It's amazing how much comes out of Germany.
Yes.
And Voll discovered that when you measured electrical resistance at acupuncture points, you could get a lot of information about what was going on in the body. Mm-hmm. So a very bright electrical engineer named Joe Galloway computerized it. And that was over 40 years ago. Well, the Asyra is a 10th generation machine. So Joe's had 9 previous versions. And his son, Mark, is an astrophysicist who did the clinicals. So he did 3 studies on thyroid, allergy, and fatigue, which were very strong. So I stumbled on this. He stumbled. He one of those little serendipity things. A fellow named Dan Clark, and I forget exactly how Dan and I hooked up. This was 18 years ago. And he was telling me about electrodermal screening, which is the category that this falls in. So he got me excited about it. So I bought a Computron, which was one of the original Voll type testers. You put the points on the fingers and toes and you measure. And I tried this for 3 years and finally just threw up my hands in exasperation. It's collecting dust in my office. So then about 16 years ago, and that's this funny story. I never told you this, Lillian.
It's okay.
But Dan, I said to Dan one time, I said, Dan, if you had cancer, who would you go to? And without a moment's breath, he said, Lee Cowden. Mm-hmm. So I went on this search to find Lee Cowden, this fella.
Is that how you found Lee?
Listeners, Lee Cowden and Dietrich Klinghardt, these guys are the 2 smartest guys on the planet as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, so I'm at a regular medical meeting and they have the vendors there. And so I'm going along and all of a sudden I came across this Asyra vendor and we're chit-chatting and they, Lee Cowden. I was like, what? you know. And so that was how I got involved in it. And it's been a great tool. And this one is nice because Joe Galloway, the engineer, realized a lot of people had trouble with the technique of Voll testing. So this one, you just hold these brass wands. Mm-hmm. So I don't have any influence, which is nice. So it's very objective. And this runs about 5,000 tests and just analyzes everything from soup to nuts. And I've just found it indispensable in my practice. So it really complements the Alpha test.
It complements the Alpha test. But again, it has a wide net. So how do you funnel it down? So how do you are trained to funnel it down to, not going so many different directions with the Alpha test and the Asyra?
Well, what it'll do initially is it'll screen all of your acupuncture meridians to see which ones are stressed.
Okay.
And then when it runs this 5,000 tests, basically what the machine is doing is saying, is this something good for you today, yes or no? Or is this something that's a problem for you today, yes or no? So out of these 5,000 tests, it's going to narrow it down to maybe 20 to 25 things. And those are kind of the core issues that are going on with that patient. Each time you run this, it's like peeling the layers of an onion. So we found it typically takes about 3 to 12 sessions to get people balanced. So when I look at that, that will start to get me thinking about other areas. I'll look for correlations with what I've seen in the history and physical and maybe lab tests. And I try to, piece those together because they should make coherent sense. And so we'll look at things like immune system. I see a lot of things about toxicity, detoxification, nutritional deficiencies, that sort of thing. And then I can make some targeted recommendations to patients to help get them balanced.
And as you get them balanced, because right now I'm taking something, you take that energy, or how does it, the things that are out of balance, and you take that and put it into this concoction that you gave me that tastes very similar to alcohol.
Yeah, well, it has alcohol in it. So we can do, you can do imprints into any liquid medium. So depending on what your body selects, I may use a homeopathic. And let me teach your listeners a little bit about
yes, please,
herbals versus homeopathics, because you hear these terms thrown around. A herbal or herbal is sort of like a natural drug. So you have to watch how much you take and so forth, because that can make you sick if you take too much. Mm-hmm. A homeopathic, on the other hand, is an extremely dilute solution of various things. So to understand homeopathy, think about syrup of ipecac. Now, if any of you who have kids know that if they swallow something poisonous, you give them syrup of ipecac and it makes them throw up. Well, if you make a very, very dilute solution, and we're talking 1 to the trillionth dilution of that, that can become a treatment for nausea and vomiting. Mm-hmm. And this is one of the problems that we've had with conventional medicine, because their mindset is stuck in molecular Newtonian physics. And so anything more dilute, in their view, would be weaker. Mm-hmm. When in homeopathy, the more dilute it is, the more potent it is. You know, if you ever go to the health food store and you look at like the boron, you've probably seen the boron ones, or different companies, you'll see 1x, 2x, 3x remedies. Those are only diluted 1 to 10, 1, 2, 3 times. But if you have, for example, a 200C homeopathic, it's been diluted 1 to 100, 200 times. So by Avogadro's law, there's not a single molecule of the original tincture in there. And yet it's a very powerful remedy. So what we can do is there's an imprinter on the Asyra, and based on what your body picks, I'll put that on that plate, and the machine can imprint frequencies that it found from the test. So this becomes a specific remedy, if you will, for you and your problem. And it's interesting, I don't know if I shared with you, I had a young man, a teenager, who was suffering with Lyme disease. And he had to come back to the office later that day, and his mom was rubbing his back. I could tell he was in a little bit of distress. And I said, so what's going on? And he asked me, does that machine treat? And I said, well, that's a very astute question. Yes, as these frequencies are going through, your body is already starting to balance. And so this young man was actually starting to have a Herxheimer reaction.
And what is that?
Well, it's when you have a die-off. You know, you can start to feel a little flu-like. And it's not serious or anything, but you can be a little uncomfortable. It's like, you know, when you have the flu, you just kind of achy and just kind of feel yucky. And but it showed that it was doing something. Mm-hmm. And was helping him to start getting his body corrected. So, you know, we'll have that remedy that you'll take, and then we might add in maybe a supplement or two. I try very hard not to have people taking 15, 20 things, because it's just, a lot of times you're already taking too many things as it is. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. We try to keep it to a bite-sized chunk, if you will.
How do you know that what the patient isn't experiencing or side effects from multiple medication? Has that ever happened to you? Have you ever seen where they come in and they're taking like 10, 15 different medications plus supplements plus, you know, how do you strip away the layer of the onion?
Sure. Well, one of the things we can do with that same plate that I was describing does the imprints. Oh, and by the way, Mark Galloway, the son who's the physicist, did studies years ago where he did imprints into water, and you could actually prove the frequencies in the water. I mean, this kind of goes over my head, but anyway, you can bring in supplements. I did that today with some patients where we can test them on the plate and see if energetically they seem to match or not. So that way we can kind of pare down what patients are taking. I have a patient of mine, his name is David, elderly guy, and he's on Life Extension's website all the time. So he orders everything they advertised, he was taking about 130 different supplements every day. The guy was just swallowing pills all day long. So we pared it down to about 30, and he was very grateful. So.
Wow. Wow. So we have Martha who wants to know what kind of doctor you are.
Well, I'm a internal medicine. I'm an MD. And so I went through the standard conventional training, and I have recertified twice. So I've actually been board certified 3 times. And I keep my nose in the conventional journals as well. I get JAMA, and I get Cleveland Clinic Journal and American Family Physician, and I get 5 or 6 of them. So I keep my feet in the conventional camp as well as the alternative, which gives me a unique perspective on your health. I don't know if that answers your question or not. But.
I'm hoping that it does. I mean, you know, for people that are going to conventional doctors and they're there for 7 minutes, and it's about writing a prescription to mask the symptom. Let's talk about symptoms and why symptoms are so important in our body.
Well, you know, it's interesting. William Osler, who's considered the father of modern medicine, said that if you listen to the patient long enough, they'll tell you what's wrong with them. And I'm always amazed at how many people, if you just sit and listen, they will really paint a picture that gives you some pretty good clues. And you just said 7, it's interesting you mentioned 7 minutes, because that is considered about the average. Mm-hmm. A lot of docs today, they have their little iPads, they don't even sit down. They stand at the doorway and they listen just long enough to figure out what drug they want to use for your problem. And then out comes, the prescription pad means the visit's over, if you ever noticed that. Mm. And, I don't blame your average doctor. They're good people. They want to help you, but they're stuck in the whole insurance model and the whole thing of having to see a lot of patients to make a profit and all this kind of thing. And Big Pharma really is behind it, in my opinion. But they got to where it's just, how fast can we get to that prescription pad? And that's just not healing.
So in average, you spend about 45 minutes, but if you need to spend more time, is that a problem?
Sure. No, we can book as much time as you need. We have to charge for it, of course, but.
And how much do you charge for your first initial visit?
Our initial visit is $250, but that's, like I said, a full 45 minutes with additional time on my own. And I do a lot of work outside the office time, so I think I give you a pretty good value. There's a number of functional docs. There's a neurologist in South Florida. For an hour and a half, he charges $950. There's, Mark Hyman, who's well known, written books, been on the lecture circuit. It's $10,000 when you walk through his door. So, I mean, I don't begrudge them. I mean, they can run their practice as they choose, but, I try to keep things at a reasonable cost, because people are on a limited budget very often, and they have to kind of watch their pennies.
Well, if you break it down, if you're paying money for 7 minutes to go see a doctor, but can somebody, if that comes to see you that maybe has insurance, can you help them with the forms that they need so that they can put it in their insurance?
Yes. So if you have a non-HMO, if you have HMO, you're kind of stuck. And if you have a non-HMO insurance, we can give you the codes and show you how to file. And we've had Medicare patients collect 75-80% of our bill for Medicare. So you can very often get reimbursed a sizable amount of our charge.
That's wouldn't And for those of you, again, who are watching and you're just now getting to know Dr. Stephen Grable, he is my doctor now, and I wouldn't have it any other way. And I drive all the way from Brevard County to go see him, and I would do that in a heartbeat. I'm just so grateful to him for his time. I think it's the first time I've sat with a doctor that they really listened. I'm talking about my doctor. I interview doctors all the time, but Dr. Grable will sit and listen so that he can listen between the breaths too. And you can call him at 904-247-7455. You can go to Dr. Grable, and that's Grable. His name is in the title of this, and you too will be amazed. Now, we're going to stay on a little bit after the show is done. For those of you who are listening on podcasts and Facebook podcast, you'll get the radio version of it. But for those of you who stay on Facebook Live at Lillian's radio show, if you have any questions, now is the time to talk as well or ask the questions. But Dr. Grable, I want to thank you. And not only, we will talk about what we're dealing with right now and the future, but just know how eternally grateful I am for you. And I'm looking forward to other people experiencing your wisdom as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
That it? That's it? Quiet, thank you. Okay, for those of you, just know that it is time to take your health back. If your body is giving you a symptom, it's talking to you. Listen, and give it exactly what it needs, because it will honor you back and spring back to health. Please remember, you're in choice. This is where you go to when you need a friend. This is Lillian McDermott wishing you love, peace, joy, and unexpected abundance. Make it the best day ever. That's a good one. So
The opinions and advice expressed on the Lillian McDermott radio show are intended for the individual callers and guests on the program and are presented to our wider audience solely for general educational purposes. Please act responsibly and consult personally with your own medical, psychological, or nutritional expert before taking any steps to improve your life.
Well, that's amazing. I am so glad and so grateful to you, Dr. Grable. And now I can look at and see all the people that have been standing by. Wanda is listening from Texas. You know, Dr. Lee Cowden lives in Texas, and he's a wonderful guy. He's not in practice anymore, but he's helping other doctors like Dr. Grable think outside the box. Would you like to share a little bit about, was it difficult for you to step outside the box and stop writing that wonderful prescription pad that I guess is so, and I want to say, I'm not against the pill.
Right.
I'm not against the prescription pad. I am for doing everything possible to being healthy. So was that difficult for you to?
You know, I call myself a contrarian. I'm just kind of wired that way. You know, if the pack goes to the left, I go to the right. It's kind of a strange thing. So for me, it really wasn't all that difficult. It is for a lot of physicians. They're kind of locked into the herd mentality, and to break free of that, they have a tough time. And I think a lot of it has to do with they have trouble accepting that anything outside of their journals has value. They believe that if they don't see it in their journals, that it doesn't really measure up. Mm-hmm. And there's an interesting, I don't know if you've heard of Marshall Angle, but she was the editor of the New England Journal of Medicine, Harvard-trained professor. She was the editor for 20 years. And she said, with a heavy heart, I have to report that over half of the journal articles are seriously flawed. And that was quite an admission for someone of her stature. So, you know, doctors, they just, you know, and I think another issue is that for them to start to look at this, if they're intellectually honest with themselves, let me put it, it's a lot easier to just say, oh, that's bunk, than to take the time to really look at it and study it. Because if they started really looking into the data and the amount of studies and things that are out there, it would really open a lot of new vistas for them. And it's unfortunate that they, you know, can or won't do that.
Yes. So we have Martha asking some questions. Martha's 4 hours away, and I think she's willing to come see you as well. Martha, you know what? Here's the deal. Get a group of your friends who are like-minded and schedule appointments for one day, carpool together, have a fun day, because it's so important that we love our bodies and our friends lift us up, and just allow us to forget the things that are happening in our lives. And laughter goes a long way. So Martha asked, how do you feel about treating diabetes type 2? And she doesn't take any drugs, which She watches what she eats, which is great. That's what we promote on the show. And she doesn't eat any grains or sugar. What would you like to say to Martha?
Well, Martha, I'll give you a tip that try to get your fat consumption down. Your cells in your body, and I have got a lot of sources for the information that I use. So conventional docs believe that the problem is all in the pancreas. The pancreas is really kind of an end organ that suffers the brunt of this. So what happens is we normally have glucose in the blood, and the cells take up the glucose and do its functions. If you have a lot of fat in your blood, and even lean meat, interestingly, is high in fat, it will tend to clog up the cells so they can't take up glucose very well. Well, that means then the glucose level is going to go up, which is by definition diabetes. So the pancreas, which is constantly measuring blood sugar, increases its production of insulin to drive the glucose into the cell. So what I would recommend right off the bat is to try to get as close to a vegetarian or vegan type diet as you can. Mm-hmm. If you're a meat person, you can have meat, just make sure it's clean, make sure organic, grass-fed beef, that kind of thing. Yeah. But we've got all kinds of supplements and homeopathics and various things that can be used. But diet and exercise, that's always the first two things you always focus on.
Yeah. So for those of you who are watching today, you may want to tune in tomorrow as well. At 5:05 is when we start the show. We sometimes go on a little bit earlier. Dr. Joel Fuhrman, who's a nutritarian, I've spoken to Dr. Grable about Dr. Joel Fuhrman ad nauseum because I am a nutritarian, because I don't like anything that's one size fits all. But there are certain things that work for you that may not work for me. And what I like about the nutritarian lifestyle is that if you want to be vegan and be nutritarian, that's fine. If you want to bring a little bit of meat in there, and that's fine too. But or if you just want to be, whatever it is, you tailor it to your lifestyle, but you keep the animal products. And notice I didn't say animal protein, animal product consumption. What's wrong with, today's my birthday. That's what it is. I'm ready to go and have a good time. Okay, so although this is a really good time. So if you reduce your animal consumption to 5 to 10%, then it's much less than what it is for the standard American diet. And so once we start, and this is the analysis or analogy that I give all the time, is if you were to put sand in your gas tank, and your car wouldn't start the next day, and you think, why is my car not starting? Everybody would say, silly girl or silly guy, you need to put gasoline, you need to put whatever octane. They know exactly where to go, which places are the best prices. They know everything about their car. But yet we add sand to our body, and people wonder, why can't I get going? And so unfortunately, and perhaps maybe Dr. Grable, you might have an opinion on this, we are hurting ourselves by the choices that we make with food, the choices we make with sleep, the choices we make, and we don't know any better. Until you know better, you can't do better. And that's why I encourage people to be a part of this classroom where we have wonderful teachers like Dr. Grable come in and teach us a new truth. So Dr. Grable, with that in mind, we know that diabetes can be reversed in 2 weeks with that. If she is not doing, if she is eating well and she still has diabetes, it sounds like she's managed it, but let's say somebody else is watching and they're doing everything they think is possible, but their sugar levels are not working. Is that, what else should they look at?
Well, there's, things like cinnamon, have been shown to lower sugar. Mm-hmm. The thing about cinnamon is you don't want to go crazy with it because there actually, believe it or not, is a toxicity if you take massive amounts of cinnamon. But, you can put it on apples and you can put it on some good whole grain toast and things like that. But there's a number of different things. There's chromium and vanadium. And see, this is where my testing would come in, because I would test things and then select, or I also do a little bit of muscle testing. Some of your listeners may be familiar with kinesiology. Mm-hmm. So I use that as a tool to try to help narrow down the number of choices, but there's 20 or 30 different things out there that one can take. But I think the biggest thing, they talk about, it's easier to change a man's religion than his diet. So what I advise people to do is begin to add in more fruits and vegetables. And you do not need to be afraid of fruit. This is one of the things where I kind of part company with some of the different folks out there that are espousing various eating plans, talking about the fructose in fruit. Well, you can't take a study on fructose where the fructose is isolated from the fruit and compare that to fructose in the whole fruit. So if you're eating the whole fruit, it's very healthy. And you can have a whole variety of fruits. I don't know if you knew this, but there's over 300 references to fruit in the Bible. And that's not by accident. So just do your best. What I do is I usually alternate in the morning fruit smoothie. So I'll either do like spinach, blueberry, and vanilla plant protein, alternating with kale, strawberry, and chocolate. I may throw a couple bananas in there.
Mm-hmm.
And then lunch, I usually will either alternate like a nice salad, which I had today, or apples with almond butter. And then at night, I'll have a nice entree with some steamed vegetables. So it's pretty simple. And so you don't have to spend hours in the kitchen. You can eat healthy and eat tasty. And if Friday night you want to have a banana split, have it, enjoy it. The thing, if you give up every single thing you enjoy, you reach a point, you say, what's the point?
You can create a banana split with some really good nice cream. Like I take my bananas that are about to go bad and I peel them and I stick them in a Ziploc bag and put them in the freezer. And I make some incredible desserts with that. And so
good idea.
You can still feel like you're having a wonderful dessert without the way that they use ingredients that are not healthy to the body. Does that make sense?
Interesting anecdote in Townsend Letter, which is one of the alternative magazines I look at. And there was a fella whose wife was a type 1 diabetic. And if she just looked at food, her sugars would jump 200 points. And he found that if he gave her fruit protein smoothies, it really satisfied her sweet cravings. And her sugars maybe went up 10, 20 points, which I thought was interesting.
Interesting, yes.
So there's different things one can do to help balance it.
Yeah. So, we did a show with Robbie. I'm trying to remember his last name. And actually, if you're watching, if you can add his name to the, it's his class is Mastering Diabetes is the name of the show. So if you go to whenyouneedafriend.com or go to my YouTube channel, you'll see Robbie Barbaro. I think it's Barbaro or Barbaro. He is the health coach that talks about exactly, Dr. Grable, what you're talking about fats. When I could eat like 3 avocados in one day, and I was sharing that. He goes, "Oh no, you want to do like a quarter of a sliver of the avocado?" I'm like, "What?" So that's why I say, let your body tell you what is good for you, because if you're eating a certain way and someone tells you that's good, we have a lot of people eating keto, a lot of people eating, all these keto and paleo, and I don't know if you've noticed, Dr. Grable, and all of you who are watching, even the keto, even the paleo, and even all these other diets that are out there are taking a bent towards vegetables. There's a vegan paleo, there's a vegan keto, and I'm not
Right,
saying that you have to be vegan.
And let me give just a little tip.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are a lot of folks that are listening, and you probably know people, it's like, who isn't stressed today? Well, when you're stressed, that takes a toll on your adrenals. And the worst thing you can do when your adrenals are down is be on a low carb diet.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people, and the studies also show it's very difficult for people to follow keto type diets more than about a year. They tend to fall off. So, it all goes back to just eat food the way God put it on the planet. And it makes sense. Intermittent fasting, is very good. Try to, give as much time as you can to let your bowel rest.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of good data behind that. So
yeah, not eating for 3 to 4 hours before you go to bed, allowing your
right,
body to digest before you go to bed so it can go into that anabolic state, which,
right,
and sleeping between the hours of 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. That's when
right.
your body starts detoxifying. I mean, we've learned so much from the teachers on the show. This is a classroom. And I get so excited when I meet a doctor like Dr. Grable. And so I want to encourage all of you. Well, first of all, we're about to go because I know that Dr. Grable is being very generous with his time, and I don't want to stay my welcome. And but I want to. This is the actual, kid you not, in 2011. The first show I ever did for the Lillian McDermott radio show. It wasn't a classroom back then. It was just the show. And the first show was on my birthday. And I could just cry to think about how this show has saved my life. And I am so passionate about helping you to learn from and grow with me and take you on my journey, because it's amazing when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And it all started by being challenged on my show. After 1 year of being on the show, someone said, I challenge you to go raw vegan for a month. And I went, bring it. Little did I know, going raw vegan, and I did this for 3 years, but it didn't support me anymore. And I can't get stuck in being, I am not a vegan. I am not a carnivore. I don't need to have a name. I am who I am, and I am is enough. And so I identify with nutritarian because I love the fact that we could all listen to our body. And Dr. Joel Furman's going to be on the show tomorrow at 5:05. So come on back so we can learn a little bit more and reverse diabetes in 2 weeks, because that's how it starts. And so I want to encourage everybody to stop with the preconceived notions of what right is and wrong is, and start listening to your heart, your body, your mind. Start meditating. I mean, what is your opinion about meditation, Dr. Grable?
Oh, there's volumes written about it. I always find it interesting. I'm sure you remember Wayne Dyer, and he was good friends with Deepak Chopra. And you know who he is. And whenever Wayne would have a problem, he'd go to Deepak and say, Deepak, I've got this problem. And Deepak would say, meditate. I was going to laugh at that. But, the key is just start with maybe a couple, 3 minutes. I'm listening to an interesting audiobook on medical intuition, so I'm trying to develop my right.
I'm going to get you go see Mona Lisa Schultz.
Yeah.
Her boot camp. That's what I did. Yeah. Exactly.
And, she said, I think she's got a good point. Just start small. Just focus on your breathing. You don't have to sit there and chant. Some people get the willies depending on their religious background. But just be quiet and just let the divine kind of speak to you. And it's very healing. It'll stimulate your parasympathetic nervous system. And you'll gradually build the time that you spend in that. But just start small.
Yeah, and Jason Stevenson is a regular on the show, and talk about Jason Stevenson meditations. You can always go there. And it's funny, I told him, I said, there's a lot of women out there that sleep with you. You got a good laugh out of that one, because, you can go to YouTube and find them there, regulars on the show. So I hope that we can continue to grow together, not only with Dr. Grable, but with other teachers that have been on the show as well. And for my birthday, this is what I want. And for the anniversary that we're going to be celebrating, because I wanted to honor Dr. Grable today, because you'll find him on my show once a month. So you need to tune in. And if you become a subscriber, you'll get an email, a blog saying who's going to be on the show, what time they're going to be on the show, and you can follow that way. But you must subscribe. And with all the uncertainty with YouTube and Facebook and censorship and all of that, you need to subscribe, because you never know when they're going to say, oopsie, we got your show off the air or whatever. So we want to make sure that we stay connected. We need to stay connected. Go to whenyouneedafriend.com, subscribe there so that you get free gifts. And whenever things are going on, you'll know first. And then, of course, subscribe to my YouTube channel, because everything gets sent to you and you don't even have to think about it. You can tune in and be a part of the classroom and ask your questions to the doctor. And where else can you get this for free? So I am, so for my birthday and for the anniversary of the show, please subscribe and make sure you confirm, and then share and like us, make some comments, send some love, and let's grow together. And Dr. Grable, I am so grateful that I'm learning a lot from you, and I'm growing with you, and I am excited. Maybe next time we can talk about chelation. What about that?
We can. There's all kinds of stuff that we can talk.
Yeah. And for those of you who have some tips, what do you want to hear Dr. Grable talk about? Because I'm telling you, the guy is like Mensa Man. He knows everything. So what were you going to say to that?
No, I was going to say, that I really enjoy, when I give talks and you have an audience, having people ask questions, that's what I really enjoy. And it's more stimulating for the people out there. So, if they have issues or things they'd really like to discuss, get back with you and let me know, and we'll be happy to talk about it. And
okay, I got to ask you another question from Martha. She just said she likes when she has bacon, she eats the Applegate bacon. I know which one she's talking about, which is the non-nitrate. Is that still, because I know that bacon and sausage and deli meats are #1 carcinogen. Is there such a thing as a good piece of bacon?
Martha, I'm sorry to say this, but
Martha,
the problem is pork itself. There's something with the meat, even if it's raised organically and all that, it's just not. It's not a good meat. Now, if you want to have a piece of bacon here and there, have your bacon and enjoy it. But there's a lot of folks that get up every day and have bacon every morning, or they have bacon chewing gum now. I mean, just so I think just again moderation. That's the key. And
well, can I share my research on bacon and pork?
Sure.
And I'm sure that we talked about this in the past. My research shows that the reason why they use pig valves and when you're having surgery is because the pig is the closest to human DNA, right? Am I going on this right path here?
That's a good point. Yeah.
So when you are using an animal to assimilate with your body and it doesn't reject it, then that means the DNA is so similar that we're kind of being carnivore. What is it? The people that are carnivorous? What are the people that cannibalism? It's cannibalism. And in the Bible, it says, do not eat animals with hoof feet.
Interesting. Yeah. That's right.
So when we are having, and I think that cannibals, when you ask them how pigs taste, they say it tastes like humans.
Interesting.
No, I'm just joking about that one. Okay. So Penny wants to know how she can make an appointment. And so if you want to know about how to make an appointment, I would say call Dr. Grable. His number is on the line. It's 904-247-7455. And I'm telling you, grab your friends, make it a day. Dr. Grable, what are your hours of operation? Because you may have to extend it for people traveling 6 hours down the road.
Exactly. We're 8 to 4, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and 8 to 12, Friday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Very good. Very good. And Claude is joining us. Thank you so much, Claude, for joining us today. I think it's the first time I've ever seen your name on there. So thank you so much for joining us. And there were other people that joined us today. We've mentioned Elizabeth. I think she's there, and Jessica. Thank you so much for joining. And I am just so grateful on this beautiful day. And I'm hoping that all of you will help my dream come true. Let's share and like and get all the likes and follow and for the social media, so that we can continue to spread this word. This is information that's life-saving. Like I said, all the teachers on my show, the person who stands before you today is nothing like the person who started the show. And I am so grateful for that. And so with that in mind, and I've had some news today and I'm excited, and at the same time, and Dr. Grable knows all about it. And if it weren't for this man, we wouldn't be able to do what I do. So thank you so much for watching today. And I look forward to celebrating the actual anniversary of the show. Hopefully Dr. Grable will be able to join us, and we'll be able to continue to heal, because you ask the body what it needs and the body will tell you. And just like Dr. Grable said, he talks to you long enough so that you tell him what's wrong with you. Dr. Grable, you have an MD in intuition, don't you?
I'm working on it.
Yeah, actually his MD is in being a medical detective.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, and he's like Inspector Gadget, because his place is full of, okay, let me take this one. Let me have you touch that. So anyway, grab a bunch of people, go on a field trip, go to Jacksonville. It's a beautiful place. He's at 1504 Roberts Road, Roberts Drive. Yeah, Drive, right? Jacksonville, Florida, 904-247-7455. And please, 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 remember, we'll always be here for you. Tune in to the classroom. And thank you, Dr. Grable, for the extra time that you gave us today.
Absolutely.
Okay. Until now, I'm going to say, is there anything else you want to say?
No, I'll say happy birthday.
Thank you so much. And you know, my birthday, you know, I was thinking today, I'm 8 years old.
Gotcha.
I'm this many.
Gotcha.
I'm this many. Okay. We'll see you soon. See you tomorrow with Dr. Furman. Take care. Bye. And